This is not going to be a typical, like, SJW type video, but maybe like an old school liberal versus conservative eye view kind of video. I found a video where a guy, well, he posted this other guy, I don't know if he was the one actually doing the recording or not, but this video of this guy going around asking a bunch of people protesting. Are they protesting or just advocating for abortion? Now, the actual demonstration, the video was posted in 2016, but still, I wanted to give my 2 cents in about it. So here's the video, or clip.
TV, and once again, an abortion case has reached the Supreme Court. As always, there are plenty of protesters here, and so I'm going to talk to some of these activists and find out whether they think there is any time during a pregnancy in which it should be illegal for a woman to have an abortion. So tell us a little bit about your costume. What are you?
I am a uterus, sir.
You are a uterus,
yeah.
Okay. At what point in a pregnancy do you think it should be illegal for someone to have an abortion?
I don't think that's my question to answer. I'm not pregnant.
At what point do you think it should be illegal for a woman to have an abortion?
That's not up to me. That's up to medical professionals.
Women, for any reason, under any circumstances, have the right to terminate an unwanted pregnancy. This is an absolutely positive, moral choice.
So at any time during the pregnancy?
Absolutely.
Up till the moment of birth?
Fetuses are not babies.
At what point do you think it should be illegal for a woman to terminate a pregnancy?
I think, nobody knows what it's like to step in a woman's shoes except her.
So at what point would you say, legally speaking, it should be illegal?
I'm going to listen to the medical professionals. Thank you very much.
You don't have an opinion on that?
Medical professionals.
If you say
Now, the problem I have with all of that is that he's going around asking all of these people, what do they think is the appropriate stage somebody should be able to have an abortion? And, it's sort of like he's laughing at them and mocking them and saying that they don't have an argument because they don't have an answer to that question. The response to the question was that they want they want to leave that up to the medical professionals to decide on when is the appropriate time to do an abortion. And I think that is a fine and excellent answer to that question. I think it's really kind of disgusting and fucking deplorable that somebody would go and ask somebody with no medical science background whatsoever as when they think is the correct time to have an abortion. These people are not medical scientists, medical engineers, or experts in the medical field whatsoever. You could be talking to kindergarten teachers. You could be talking to a waitress at name a restaurant. It doesn't really matter. You could be talking to an accountant. These women are not medical professionals. The correct person to ask that question to would be a medical professional. You are taking an argument and simplifying it down to a moral eye view and debate. And that's fine. That's fine. It is a moral eye view. It is a moral debate. It totally is. But when you ask the question, when is the appropriate time to perform an abortion? Most people don't have an idea of when the central nervous system develops, when brain activity forms, when the first heartbeat forms. That is something that a medical professional would know. And really, then you have to ask these questions: does a heartbeat mean that there's brain activity? Does brain activity mean that there's a central nervous system? Does the central nervous system mean that there's brain activity? These are something that a medical professional would know. Somebody in the scientific field that studies medical science. They're going to know what happens during gestation while you're in utero. Most people don't have the answer to that. That's why I think it is a very appropriate response to the question of when do you think abortion is appropriate and inappropriate to say, I would leave that up to the medical professions to decide. So essentially, before you have brain activity and a central nervous system and heartbeat, you have something that actually resembles, after you have those things, when you have those things, you have something that resembles a human. Before that, you have a clump of cells that resembles more or less what looks like a parasite feeding off of a host, which is really almost what it is. It looks like, it doesn't even look like a person, it looks like a little worm. And most women that I've talked to that have undergone abortions, you can't even tell that they're pregnant when they have the abortion. And it's not like they're in the abortion office every day. Yes, you do have people taking advantage of the system. You will always have people taking advantage of the system. There is nothing you can do about that. Nothing you can do. And I have an example for that I'll talk about in a second. But let's talk about the gestation period. Is that when we're considering life, and life not life, that's the moral question, and that's something I would leave to the medical professionals, because just because you have brain activity, that doesn't mean that you're cognitively aware of your own existence. Just because you have a central nervous system doesn't mean you have brain activity to register what pain means. And just because you have a heart rate doesn't mean that you're indeed cognitively aware and have a central nervous system that's capable of communicating what pain is to the brain. Now, I would disagree with women that say that they think that it should be aborted the moment it's about to pop out of the womb. No, I disagree with that. That's crazy. Like I said, this is something that the medical professionals would be able to analyze and look at and say, when is it harmful for the woman when does it become harmful for the woman to have an abortion? When does it become harmful for the infant growing inside the woman to have an abortion? When do you start taking ethics into play because it's really resembling human life and not just a clump of cells feeding off of the mother? Somebody with a scientific knowledge of medical science is going to know what that stuff is. That's essentially what they're saying. You're talking to a bunch of people that are advocating for a freedom, a type of freedom to be able to have an abortion. You're not talking to a bunch of medical professionals. And I think it's really bad taste and really poor of you to go and ask these people these questions and say that the whole argument is flawed because these people are admitting that they don't have enough medical science information to give you that answer. So we look at science, we look at medical science, and we listen to what they have to say, because using the ideology of right-wing conservative Christian moral views has not done us good in the past. And I'll give you an example of that. In the 1950s, conformity, that sounds like an utter nightmare to me, and I'm glad I didn't live in it. But if we look at the gay community back then, the homosexuals that lived back then, it was just illegal to come out of the closet. It could ruin your entire life, and this was making something illegal doesn't make it go away. It doesn't make it go away. And that's one of the problems, is when you're making the abortion, you're trying to make it illegal based on a moral ground instead of a scientific one. Using the scientific one, we can establish parameters, we can establish some legislation, some laws that say when is acceptable, when is not acceptable. When you're just throwing all that out the window and saying, well, because of my moral eye view, it's just wrong altogether and should be just wiped off of the table, just not even up for debate. But when we look at the homosexuals in the 1950s conformity with the conservative Christian moral eye view, you gave birth to a very, very horrendous aspect to that still exists in the gay community today. And that is that it was it would make you such a social pariah to be a homosexual and come out of the closet back in the 1950s. Many of these homosexual men and women were getting married to the opposite gender like they're supposed to according to Christian bullshit. But there was a problem with that. It gave birth to a scene of anonymity. You had guys fucking each other in bathrooms, trying to get that urge, the desire, the lust, the feel, for the attention, the sexual attention of another male, or for the females, a female. Apply it to whatever. So they had to do this anonymously. The more anonymous it was, the safer it was for you to not be found out, for the society not to find out that you're a homosexual and have your livelihood stripped of you, your job stripped from you, your household stripped from you, become a complete social pariah. And it still exists in the gay community today. You have people that want this anonymity. So that created a poison. That did more harm than good. And some could argue that that is just something that exists in the gay community. But I think that really ultimately comes from people being against homosexuals and people wanting to stay in the closet for fear of coming out. And therefore they behave differently than the mainstream culture of what we see reflected in heterosexuals. Marriage and dating and all that sort of stuff, because it got thrown out the window. It's not just they're men and they're more horny. Yes, that's true, but you can see that even with people that are out of the closet. Never mind. So yeah, in the gay community, in the gay community you do see more promiscuity, but I'm talking specifically about the anonymity. About anonymous sex. And now, with the HIV thing that we have going around, that's really dangerous. I think that goes without saying. So I think basing legislation off of a moral ideology is not a good idea. But using science and the scientific knowledge that we have to say when it's healthy, when it's not healthy, when we start talking about ethics, and using, when you're talking about passing legislation, the people that are wanting the legislation passed are wanting a freedom. They're wanting a freedom. It's the medical people that are going in and going to define the parameters around that, not a moral argument, but something that is based on logic and reason and critical thinking. So I think it's absurd that you go up to these people and you're asking these average everyday people that don't probably have a clue about medical science on when the appropriate time to abort a fetus is. Well, the correct answer is basically what the medical scientists, or the people in the medical field would see it as ethical, where there is no brain activity or no real way for the fetus to tell if it's in pain, and definitely, it's not capable of understanding its own existence right now where it's set, I believe it's anything past the third trimester is a no-go as far as abortions go. And I don't even know what takes place during the first, second, and third trimesters. I know a little bit, but I don't know intricate details about it, like the development of the brain and its understanding of pain and the development of the central nervous system and whether or not there's a heart rate or not at the third trimester. But it seems to be that the third trimester is working out pretty well. And I would think that that was something that had been brought up by the medical community, not by a bunch of average people. So why are you dismissing their argument because they're not medical scientists? That's my question. And back to this notion that women are just going to abuse it, women are just going to abuse it. Every woman I've talked to that has had an abortion, every single one of them, it is a complicated decision to make. It is not by any means an easy decision. It's a very hard decision. And there are a plethora of reasons why women have abortions. In fact, I can tell you, I know of a woman that had an abortion. And the reason why, and see, this is fucked up because she was on birth control. The guy used a condom. They were taking the necessary actions not to have a child. And you can't say abstinence is the answer because we are sexual creatures. We are meant to procreate. We are meant to desire and crave sex. We are. In fact, we're one of the few animals in the animal kingdom that have sex for pleasure. The majority of them don't do that. It's also a way of showing compassion and bonding with another person. It's an ultimate form of bonding with somebody. So, now this person that I'm thinking of in particular, she ended up getting pregnant even though she was on birth control, and even though the guy was using a condom, the condom broke, some sperm splashed into the pussy, and guess what? She got pregnant. You know why she got an abortion? Because she was 50-something years old. And I don't know if you know that, or know this, but at 50-something years old, there's a lot of complications that occur in pregnancies. She was living in poverty at the time, she wasn't married, and she was 50-something years old, which can cause a lot of complications if you're trying to give birth at 50-something years old when you're on the verge of hitting menopause. And that's why she had it done, is because it could have killed her, let alone the child anyway. So what about the moral aspects of the conservative Christian Republican values when it comes to abortions? I don't think they're serving us much good, because you could make it illegal, but there's still instances like the 50-some-odd-year-old woman getting pregnant by accident that could have killed both of them. There's instances of rape, but you're boiling it all down to one question of when is it acceptable and when is it not acceptable? And saying that the whole argument is flawed because the group of people that want the ability to have it in case any of those instances occur can't answer the question of when is the right time. And say, leave it up to the medical experts. And I would say the same thing. I think that that's absolutely the appropriate response, is saying, leave it up to the medical experts, because they know what happens during gestation. They know what happens during pregnancy. They know the development of a fetus while in utero. I just thought I would do something a little different than SJW stuff, but I thought this was a good one. And if you are Republican and you are a pro-lifer, I really like what Penn and Teller said about pro-life, and everybody's pro-life. It's whether or not you're for or against abortion. If you're against abortion, if you're a pro-lifer, feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. I don't mind. It's an interesting debate, and we may never see an end to it. But one thing I would like to point out is that it was illegal before, and women were still fucking doing it. And they would hemorrhage, they would go to the hospital, some of them had internal bleeding so bad that they would die. So making something illegal doesn't solve the problem. Just like in the instance of homosexuality, making it illegal and into a social pariah like it was in the past didn't make it go away. You just forced them to hide it through anonymity. It's unfortunate, but what do you do? I know, don't do it again. So, like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, I'm out.